On July 6, 2026, a woman named Asha Sharma sent an email to her employees. It contained one of the most honest sentences any corporate executive has ever written about their own company. It read, "Our business today is not healthy." That sentence, four words, ended an era. 3,200 jobs, 5 studios, the most significant restructure in Xbox history. In a typical year, Xbox lost 64 cents for every dollar it invested. 64 cents on every single dollar. This isn't a story about corporate greed. It isn't a story about lazy executives or bad decisions made in bad faith. This is a story about a genuinely well intentioned idea that broke everything it touched. And understanding why that happened might be the most important thing anyone in gaming can understand right now. Let's dive in. The scale. Let's establish the full picture before we get into the argument, because the scale of what happened on July 6, 2026 requires context to truly land. Asha Sharma, who replaced Phil Spencer as CEO of Microsoft Gaming in February 2026 after Spencer's surprise retirement after 38 years, announced the most significant restructure in Xbox history. 3,200 jobs cut, roughly 20% of the entire gaming division. 1,600 eliminated immediately on July 6th, the rest throughout fiscal year 2027. While 5 studios are leaving Xbox entirely, Double Fine, Compulsion Games, Ninja Theory, Undead Labs are leaving Xbox, while Arkane enters a formal review process in France. But let me tell you what those names mean. Double Fine Productions, Tim Schafer's studio, maker of Psychonauts, returns to independence 7 years after Microsoft acquired it in 2019. Once again, it will be an independent studio. Schaffer wrote on Instagram, "We're thankful to everyone at Xbox for 7 great years together." While Compulsion Games, the Canadian team behind 2025 South of Midnight, also leaves with the rights to their own words and runway funding for their next games. But Ninja Theory and Undead Labs are being sold rather than freed. Both reportedly carry funding to complete the projects already in production. So State of Decay 3 and the next Senmo game are not cancelled. They simply won't ship under the Xbox first party banner. And Arkane, the studio behind Dishonored, Dishonored 2 and Deathloop, is entering legally required consultation with its works council to begin looking at potentially strategic options. Due to local laws in France, Arkane's future has yet to be figured out. Bloomberg reports Xbox intends to sell or spin out the studio. Also, the future of Marvel's Blade, Arkane's in-development action game, has not been addressed. But one important thing to note is that all 4 confirmed departing studios joined Xbox in the same wave of acquisitions. And that timing matters because it means Microsoft is unwinding roughly a third of its pre-Activision acquisition spree. Furthermore, studios in the Bethesda organization like id Software and ZeniMax Online Studios are not shutting down or are cutting a significant number of staff. This isn't belt tightening. This is Microsoft publicly conceding that its acquisition-fueled expansion of Xbox did not pay off the way it hoped. The question is why? And the answer is more complicated and more tragic than most coverage is giving it credit for. The math. Here is the number that explains everything. In a typical year, Microsoft lost 64 cents for every dollar it invested in first party studios. Sharma made this publicly and directly by saying that we are not the best home for every type of studio. In a typical year, we lost 64 cents for every dollar we invested. Sit with that. For every $100 Xbox put into its studios, the salaries, the tools, the time, the creative infrastructure, it got back $36. Xbox will close fiscal year 2026 at approximately a 3% profitability margin, far short of the roughly 30% Microsoft requires of its major divisions. Excluding the 68.7 billion Activision Blizzard acquisition, the division spent more than 20 billion over 5 years on content, platform, and hardware subsidies, while annual revenue shrank by nearly 500 million over the same period. Gaming revenue fell 7% last quarter to 5.3 billion. Hardware sales dropped 33%. But here's the contrast that should make every Xbox fan furious and every Microsoft shareholder nervous. Microsoft's Q3 net income for the fiscal year 2026 reached 31.8 billion, up by 23% year over year. Microsoft is on pace to spend more than 100 billion on AI and cloud infrastructure in the fiscal year. So the company is not in financial distress, Xbox is. The parent company posted 31.8 billion profit in a single quarter. The gaming division returns is losing 64 cents on every dollar while 200 people lose their jobs. And that contrast, Microsoft thriving while Xbox collapses, is not an accident. It is a direct consequence of where Microsoft chose to invest its capital. And it is the context without which nothing else about the story makes sense. The idea that broke everything. Here's the argument I want to make that most media is missing. Expo didn't fail because the people running it were incompetent. It didn't fail because the games were bad. South of Midnight was genuinely beautiful. Hellblade 2 was a technical marvel. Hi-Fi Rush was one of the most joyful games made in years. Xbox failed because Game Pass, a genuinely sincerely consumer-friendly idea, contained a financial contradiction that nobody fully understood until it was too late. Here's how Game Pass was supposed to work. Microsoft would build an enormous library of games. Players would pay a monthly subscription to access all of them. The subscription revenue would fund the studios making the games. Everybody wins. But the problem was that this model only worked if subscription revenue scaled faster than studio costs. But it didn't. While consumers might be willing to pay a monthly fee to Netflix to stream thousands of TV shows and movies, most gamers don't take the same approach. Games are a huge commitment compared to TV shows and movies. Netflix works because you can watch 5 shows in a week. You cannot play 5 major games in a week. The consumption model that makes streaming services viable simply doesn't translate to gaming. A player who buys Game Pass might meaningfully play 2 or 3 games a year from the service. That's a very different value proposition for Microsoft than it is for Netflix. Microsoft made simultaneous bets on console hardware, PC gaming, mobile, Game Pass subscriptions, and cloud streaming, but pivoted strategies faster than content could be delivered. The result was a studio system that had become overextended, with flagship franchises now adequately funded to compete and win. But here's the coolest part of the game model for the studios themselves. When a game launches on Game Pass, Microsoft counts it as a subscription benefit rather than a retail sale. The studio doesn't see the revenue that a traditional $7 purchase would generate. Game Pass accounting denied studios retail revenue despite player milestones. So you could make a game that a million people would play and love, but because they played it through Game Pass rather than buying it outright, the financial return to the studio was a fraction of what would have been under the traditional model. So the studios were succeeding creatively, but the model was failing financially, and they were the ones who paid the price. The human cost. I want to pause the analysis for a moment. Double Fine, Compulsion Games, Ninja Theory, Undead Labs, Arkane, more than 300 jobs leaving the division from the confirmed studio departures alone, the 200 total by the end of fiscal year 2027. These are people who made Dishonored, people who made Psychonauts, people who made South of Midnight, a game that came out just months ago, made by a team now navigating an independence they didn't ask for, on a timeline they didn't choose. Sharma wrote in a memo by saying that these changes will directly affect people who have poured their creativity into building Xbox. Many joined us through acquisitions, while others were recruited here to sort us out because they loved this industry and loved Xbox. Today's decisions do not reflect their talent or dedication. That sentence is true, but it's also somewhat hollow given the circumstances. The decisions reflect the financial model that brought these talented people to Xbox, and that model is now the thing destroying the jobs it created. Furthermore, the actor who voiced Iroh in Avatar, Greg Baldwin, said on social media that the new regime at Paramount was called straight up evil when discussing the Avatar game cancellation earlier this year. The gaming community's reaction to the Xbox news has been similar in this fury, but I think fury, while understandable, misses something important about what actually happened here. This wasn't malice, it was miscalculation. And miscalculation at this scale, affecting this many people's livelihoods, might actually be worse, because at least with malice, someone knew what they were doing. The reset. So, what happens now? Sharma has framed all of this not as a retreat, but as a reset. And to her credit, the reset has a specific logic worth examining seriously rather than dismissing. Xbox's next fiscal year will see approximately the same content spent as the prior year, which was a record for Xbox. However, the investment will be different, with titles including Minecraft and the Elder Scrolls franchise being prioritized as major growth areas. Xbox has been using Minecraft as a funding source for other studios, and Minecraft's developer Mojang has not been given the funding it needs to grow. Furthermore, for the expansion of Elder Scrolls, which has not released a new game since 2011, Xbox will be reallocating some of its team and funding towards producing new projects. That's a meaningful admission. Minecraft is one of the most profitable entertainment properties on the planet, and Xbox was using it to subsidize studios that were losing money. That's not a strategy. That's a structural problem that needed addressing, regardless of how painful the addressing would be. Sharma hasn't ruled out a return to Xbox exclusive games. She promised a return to Xbox under her leadership. And there's one more piece of context that reframes where Xbox goes from here. Over the past year, Xbox has begun shipping its biggest exclusives onto rival hardware. Halo Campaign Evolved landed on PlayStation 5, ending roughly 25 years of Halo and Xbox exclusivity. Selling a $49.99 game to a PS5 owner is pure incremental revenue that a Game Pass download never captures. The 2006 layoffs and the multi-platform push are two sides of the same coin. Shrink the cost base and monetize the software everywhere, a player might pay for it. The strategy emerging from this reset is becoming clear. Fewer studios, bigger bets on fewer franchises, games sold everywhere rather than locked to one platform or subscription, software as the business rather than hardware as the identity. Whether that's enough to save Xbox as a meaningful force in gaming, that's the question nobody can answer yet. The real question. Here's the question I keep coming back to. Was Game Pass a mistake? Not a business mistake, a values mistake. Because Game Pass at its best was one of the most genuinely play-friendly ideas the AAA gaming industry has ever produced. Day one access to major releases for a monthly fee, a library of hundreds of games, cloud streaming that let players play anywhere. For players, especially the players in low-income countries, where $70 games represent a significant financial commitment, Game Pass was transformative. It meant access to gaming at a level that retail pricing had previously made impossible. And that access came at a cost that the people who provided it ultimately couldn't sustain. The tragedy of Xbox's collapse isn't that the executives were evil, it's that they tried to build something genuinely good for players, but built it on a financial foundation that couldn't hold the weight of that goodness. Sharma cast the layoff as a reset rather than a retreat from gaming. History is full of companies that mistake longevity for inevitability. That sentence cuts both ways. It's a warning about complacency, but it's also an admission that Xbox, a brand that once seemed as permanent as gaming itself, is no longer inevitable. 3,200 people learned that on July 6, 2026. Conclusion. So, can Xbox save itself? Sharma says yes. The reset is real, the franchise focus is real, the multi platform revenue is real. But here's what I actually believe: Xbox as a hardware platform, as a reason to own a specific box rather than PlayStation, is probably over. The multi platform strategy, the Game Pass model, the software first identity, these aren't signs of a company fighting back, they are signs of a company gracefully accepting what it has become. And what it has become might actually be fine. Xbox as a publisher, Xbox as a Game Pass service, Xbox as a company that makes Elder Scrolls and Minecraft and Call of Duty available everywhere. That company can be viable. That company can be profitable. That company doesn't need to lose 64 cents on every dollar. But what it cannot be, what will never be again, is what it was in 2001, when a green controller changed gaming forever. That Xbox is gone. So the question isn't whether Xbox can save itself. The question is whether what saves itself is still recognizably Xbox. I genuinely don't know the answer. But what do you think? Is this a reset or a surrender? Can Xbox rebuild something worth caring about? Or is this the slow end of something that mattered? Just talk in the comments down below. I'm Silver, and hey, if you like this video, click like, share, and subscribe to watch more videos like this one. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Until next time, stay silver.